What's up, Internet? My name's Nerdy.
And I'm Clarus.
And this is Discussing Daggerheart.
Hell yeah.
A very different show.
Yeah, so... Everything changed.
Yeah, when we first thought about, hey, let's talk about Daggerheart Weekly on Wednesdays, we were like, oh, it'll be so easy. It'll be so easy. Because
be fun.
The 1.2 will stick around for a few months, and then we'll have all of our videos
out here and there.
And we'll have finished all of the characters and classes and codexes or domains and everything. And then it'll change, and we'll be able to talk about how it changed. And then 1 month into their freaking beta test, they're like, nope, completely new game.
Everything different. Yep. So
yeah.
That's fun.
So moving forward, we're probably not going to do a weekly show right now about the game. I don't think that it is worthwhile for us to put out content that is just going to be wrong soon. We are still going to make videos about it, and it's just going to kind of be less structured and a little bit more when we want to.
Yeah, and I think we're still gonna play it. We do have like a game kind of in the works that we still want to make.
We have a game in the works.
Yeah, I just mean we gotta figure out the date and there's lots of stuff to figure. It's in the works.
But whether that's going to be 1.3 or 1.4, we don't even know that yet.
Who knows?
So yeah, that's all to say. We're still excited about Daggerheart.
Yeah.
But if you're watching our old videos and you're like, none of the information in this is right, you're right.
That's correct, yes. But the best part about this is that we don't have a what we got wrong on Daggerheart because it's all wrong. So
no, we do.
It doesn't matter.
What we got wrong was everything.
Yeah, we got
we got everything
wrong.
There were plenty of interesting conversations in the comments. One thing I did want to bring up before we move on from the what we got wrong about discussing Daggerheart while we were discussing Daggerheart segment is people were saying that the druid's ability isn't overpowered because the DM can just spend fear to end it.
So we're talking specifically about the ability that if you are the elemental druid, that you, like, if you pick water at level 5, you can move...
your specialization of your subclass feature.
Yeah, you can move somebody 30 feet when they take an action. Just boop them around the map.
Yeah, for free. That is not how it works anymore, so it doesn't actually matter. But before we move into what the new version of it is, because today we are going to be discussing Update 1.3, some thoughts about it, big picture. We're not going to go into every single ability because they changed everything. But yeah, the argument that the DM can just end it, to me, is not a great game design mechanic when it is so overpowered that the DM has to just end it.
Yep.
Right? I think that, like, if it is so much more powerful than the value of the DM using fear to end it for anything else, you know what I mean? If you have a fear mechanic where you can spend one fear to do, say, 66 damage, which is a lot of damage, and they have the ability to throw somebody 30 feet in the air and do 3d20 damage for free, you're going to spend the fear to stop them from doing that 3d20 damage, right? And so it becomes that kind of a game. That ability, significantly nerfed.
Yeah.
With this new update, they've made that one a lot more clear, where you have to spend a hope to use it, and you can only move someone 10 feet.
Yeah.
Makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, big difference.
Is not the most overpowered thing I've ever heard of anymore. It has a cost, and you cannot throw someone 30 feet in the air, which is crazy.
Yeah, I still like it, though. So
I like it a lot more.
I feel like that's a win-win,
I feel like it's a lot more useful now. Although, again, it gets into the, like, there still aren't opportunity attacks, so moving someone 10 feet, how useful that is like area dependent, but...
Yeah, it's pretty much just to, push them off a cliff or, like, move them away from, like, a friend or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about Daggerheart 1.3. Clarus, we sat down last week for a lovely live stream between Spencer Stark, the game designer, and Matt Mercer, who does not need an introduction.
The legendary.
What was your number one takeaway from that live stream?
Well, I think it would actually have to be that it seems like they are listening to people.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I think that collaborative games should be made with a collaborative process.
Mm-hmm.
And, they have opened up that collaboration to pretty much anyone who is willing to take the time for it. And I think that is really cool. Because it's like when you put out a video game and you can try and account for as many bugs as possible.
Yeah.
But there is just simply no way you can account for hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people playing, because there are always going to be some things that you didn't account for, because our brains can only hold so much information.
Mm-hmm.
And so opening it up to the public, getting feedback from different kinds of scenarios, different kinds of players, different kinds of DMs. I think I have really high hopes for this game, because, they don't seem to be afraid to just be like, you know what? Let's change it. Like, they changed so much, which is a lot for us. It's a lot to talk about, and it's a lot to learn and kind of keep up with.
It's a new game.
Yeah, so I think that in the short term, it might dissuade people from checking it out. But I think in the long term, it is beneficial for everybody who wants to partake in Daggerheart.
It's so fascinating, right? I understand your last point there, because it's like, why play it
now?
Yep. If it's going to change this much, this quickly, like a month is a short amount of time for a 377-page rule set.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that people are like, oh, well, if it's just going to be different in a month, I'll check it out when it comes out, maybe.
Yes.
There's going to be people like us who are like, no, we'll play it throughout, because we're going to beta test it. And
sure, but even us, we were going to do a weekly show, and now we're like, well, how feasible is that when the things change so much?
But I want to bring the show back when it actually comes out and actually do those things about the finished product.
Yeah.
I just realized that doing that about a beta product doesn't really make a lot of sense.
No, but I think it will be fun, and at least interesting for me, hopefully for you guys as well, but I think it's going to be fun to watch the evolution of this game.
1000%.
And kind of be there from the beginning. There's plenty of people who this is, a smaller part of their life, who will pick it up later and don't need to invest in the step-by-step creation of this game.
Yes.
But then who will enjoy it at the end. And I feel really cool that in some small way, I get to be a part of this process. I think that's neat.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that my biggest takeaway from it was you took the right takeaway, which was they're clearly listening. But I think that, I'll give a new one. The changes that they've made are not just fixes, but there are a couple that are legitimately like, hey, here's a whole new mechanic.
Yes.
And I love that they are in a point in the beta where they are willing to try and overhaul the things that players were talking about.
Yeah.
And also, they're like, we're also going to add in this entire environment idea that I think is brilliant. A lot of the live stream that we watch, I was sitting there like, holy shit.
Yeah,
this is just a different game. When they got to the environment section, I think that you can watch Matt Mercer gets very excited during the environment section.
Yeah.
I think that it's something that he does kind of naturally as a DM.
Yeah.
But building a mechanic for it into the world, I think is very smart. I think giving your environments a stat block is, it's not revolutionary in that, like, I think that people have been building traps into their environments forever, but I think that making it a function of the game changes the way that GMs will approach it and its prevalence in games, right?
Yeah, having an obstacle that's not just like a person to like stab and punch, like to get through, is really fun. I think that it opens up a lot of doors. It's one thing that if I were DMing a game, I don't know if like having a stat block for the environment would come to my brain at first, but now that it's like been put out there, it kind of gets those gears turning, and I'm really stoked to see what they come up with.
Yeah, it's so fascinating how the game design can inform the gameplay, right? I think that's what's so beautiful about the fact that there are so many different TTRPGs in existence.
Yeah, is
that you can have 50 TTRPGs that are all fantasy TTRPGs, but the mechanics will change the way the same table would play through the same story, just by the nature of, I don't think that I would normally think of my character has a deal with a archfey and that's where their magic comes from. But at the same time, Warlock is my favorite class to play in D&D, right? And so if the mechanic wasn't there, I don't know that I would have thought of that.
Right.
Right. And and there's so many examples of that. I love TTRPGs is what I'm trying to say. But let's get into specifically Daggerheart and some of the big changes that came about in 1.3. We're going to be kind of going through the change log. We're going to skip over some stuff that's a little bit less important.
We're also not going to get into the super nitty gritty of things because there is too much. Like, that would be a crazy long video. Even in the Critical Role one, or
they didn't get into everything. We're not going to get into a lot of individual cards and things like that, but we are going to start off with the thing that we probably talked about the most, even though it's not the most important thing in the game. But coins. Coins now come in coins.
Yes.
10 coins is a handful, 10 handfuls is a bag.
Yes.
This is by far the least important change that removes the most amount of difficulty for me. I think that discussing what a handful is with your party, you just needed to set it. And now that it's set, I feel like no one will ever have a question about it again. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's just for the players that need to know how many coins is in a handful in a world where all the hands are different sizes. I'm glad they went with base 10. It's just a smart choice.
The hand size doesn't matter.
What?
The hand size doesn't matter in previous version. Because if you as the DM give me a handful, no matter what race I am, I still mark a handful. And then when you say something costs a handful, I still give you a handful.
Oh, 100%. I totally agree with what you're saying there. I just mean that for a short-term system, I think that that's a fine call. But for long-term campaigns, I just think I just don't think it is built out enough. And I think that this is going to work for more tables.
Yeah. I think agreed, a long-term campaign, being able to buy new equipment or upgrade or those kinds of things that are a little, you could say, like, crunchy. Like, they're a little nitty-gritty because it's like math. But I like don't know how
like math.
I don't know how to say that. But so, like, those are the things that help a long-term campaign feel more rooted in reality.
Yeah, I also appreciate them being like, look, we took away fortunes and hoards because you don't carry that on you. Once you get to a chest, if you want to have a second chest, you've got to put that chest somewhere. I still think a chest is more than you could possibly carry on you for like a day of travel without taking exhaustion. But that's why in our campaign, we have magic coin purses because I don't want to think about it.
Yeah. I was literally picturing a chest like this.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter.
It's why DMs will eventually give you a bag of holding in D&D. Because it's like, we just don't want... I don't care.
Yeah, where's ours?
You all have coin purses. That's a thing in Dragonlance. In our Dragonlance game, I was like, you find coin purses on people and you can take the money out and count it, but I don't want to think about encumbrance.
Yeah.
It breaks my brain.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest actual change to the game, though, that isn't just the coins, is damage thresholds.
Yes.
Damage thresholds have been massively reduced.
Yeah, you no longer take stress for damage that is below your minor threshold because... Didn't they also change most of the minor thresholds to 1?
Yeah, minor thresholds start at 1.
Yeah, so there you go.
So this game is lethal as fuck.
Yes. And instead of once you fill up stress, you take damage. Now, if you are full up on stress, you are vulnerable.
And you take damage.
Oh, you do take damage.
Yeah, if you continue to take stress after you are vulnerable, you take damage. This game is lethal.
Oh, yeah, no, that's spicy. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. So let's break those down into separate things, though. So damage thresholds now, for everyone starts at 1. All of the damage thresholds have been lowered a little bit. There's a lot of abilities that let you raise your damage thresholds. The reason why I say this makes the game very lethal is one of the mechanics that Daggerheart introduced in 1.2 when that beta test came out was that there were a lot of ways in which the GM could use hordes of minions in order to have a bunch of weak characters pile up damage together to maybe get up to your minor, maybe get up to your major threshold. The minions don't work anymore in this game because why would anyone roll
as a horde
when your minimum damage is 1? So if you are attacked by 4 people, now granted, the GM could say, well, the 4 of them together are doing 1 HP to you.
Yeah, if it was like a swarm of bees, each individual bee isn't gonna
but I think
do
that
1 damage.
The fun of the minion stat block being that they're super weak and for them to even hurt you, they have to collectively do 8 damage, right? He's a little bit gone from this now because now, especially at low levels, I think that gyms are going to have to put a lot of effort into balancing encounters to not kill players.
Yeah.
Because when you can only take 4 hits, that's not a lot.
Nope.
Right? Like 4 hits is a super low number.
Yeah.
Because and you know, obviously if you get crit or whatever in D&D and you have a big couple of hits, that can take down a low level player as well, but then you go into death saves. The problem here is that it's 4 hits and then there's no like getting up without taking a scar or, you know, rolling you know, with hope, right?
Yeah.
And I just this is I'm so curious to see the new stat blocks for minions coming out of this because I found that it was really valuable, especially because of the way that armor slots work. And we'll talk in a minute about how armor slots have changed. I found it very valuable for the players to be able to use their armor slots to get down to a stress.
Yep.
Because it's easier to wipe a stress away. There's a lot of abilities that you can manage your stress with. And now that's just fundamentally gone. And when you fill up your stress, which you have to do to use your abilities, you become vulnerable, meaning that your enemies all have advantage on you and you have functionally less health now.
Yep.
Depending on the danger of the thing you're fighting. You are actually like more likely to die in Daggerheart now from a bunch of weak minions than you are from a monster that can do 1,000,000 damage a turn. Because there's a max number of HP points that a monster that does 1,000,000 damage a turn can do to you.
Yes.
Like 6 dudes are now more dangerous to you in one turn than a meteor hitting you in Daggerheart. And so so narratively that gets a little weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of like, how do you manage that? Where it's like, well, as a GM, you're like, well, all my 5 guys over here, but if I attack that person 5 times on the first turn and they used all of their stress points to fucking climb the hill and they're vulnerable, I'm going to kill this PC immediately.
Yeah.
Because no matter how well I roll, right?
Depending on also how many action tokens the GM has at that time. Like it's, you know, there are other factors in there, but
and there's the ability if they're wearing like heavier armors to get a attack down to 0 and take no damage. That's definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
Do you feel like I'm overreacting to this?
Not overreacting. I think that like stripping it down to its bare bones like you are is beneficial, but also acknowledging that there are also other circumstances that affect these kinds of things, and also like they are not done making revisions. They're like, you know, even the like adventure that they put out is not available right now.
There's no quick start adventure for 1.3.
Because they're trying to fix that because, you know, they're working on these kinds of things, including stat blocks. So yeah, I think it will be interesting to see how they adapt the other side of this because of what they've changed here.
I just wonder if they get rid of the minion mechanic. The horde-y kind of minion mechanic.
But it also might be like a horde might have to be like creatures that are, you know, smaller than like a certain size because like I said, a swarm of bees is different than a swarm of dudes. You know. Well,
no, but in the previous version, like we were running a horde in the final encounter. And they were significant characters. Like they were not. Now, granted, they only have 1 HP, so they're kind of like quick one and dones, right? It is just a big. It's a big question. I think that part of the reason why it's a question for me is that with the lack of attack of opportunity, right? Being a tank character is really hard in this game because the enemies can just leave your periphery very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot harder to lock enemy characters down merely by your presence in Daggerheart.
Yeah.
And so if you do have that DM that does want to kill the wizard, it's going to be easier to do that here than in other games.
Yes. No, that's fair.
Yeah. Okay. In addition to damage thresholds, let's talk about the things around it. So armor, you have a lot more armor slots.
Yeah, 6?
Yeah, you've doubled. So you started with 3 in 1.2. Now you have 6 armor slots, probably to help deal with the amount of life that you essentially lost in the trade-off.
Yeah.
And also, you, in addition to that being 6, your maximum hope dice that you can accrue as a player is now 6 instead of 5, and the maximum fear that a GM can save up is also now 6.
Yeah.
So in order to kind of ease up on the accounting, particularly in the early game of Daggerheart, all of these numbers have kind of just been made 6. You're rolling d6s for hope dice usually, and so although I guess you're not doing that anymore. Yeah, because most hope things are d6, but I say that, but that's not even true because advantage has changed. We're going to talk about how advantage was changed. I was trying to use that as a segue, and it wasn't a good segue. Oh, this game is fundamentally different.
Yeah.
It is. Like if you go back and watch our actual plays of it, our 2 sessions, almost none of those rules are still in the book.
Yep.
It's wild.
Or abilities. Like so many of them have changed.
Yeah. So the GM, in addition to the GM now only being able to save up 6 fear at a time, one of the big things that changed around fear is that now when a player rolls with fear during combat, the player can either choose to make a GM move or take a fear.
Yes, not both.
Not both.
Yes.
Which, in some ways, I feel like really balances the game a little bit better. I found that I had unlimited actions as a GM when we were playing our actual play.
Yeah.
I also think that this can...
And there were only 4 people at the table. Imagine if you had more.
Yeah.
Right?
With the new advantage system, I am worried that this skews the game a little bit more towards the players. And let's talk about that here. Advantage now in Daggerheart works like this. When the player has advantage, they roll 2 d12s for hope and 1 d12 for fear, and they choose the better of the 2.
Yes. Now, if you roll with disadvantage, you still roll 2 hope die, but you pick the lower one.
What this fundamentally means is that you have a drastically increased chance of rolling with hope with advantage, and you also have a drastically increased crit chance as you now have 2 choices. You might roll a 12 and a 1, right, on your hope die, but if you roll a 1 on your fear die, you're going to take the 1 on your hope die because that is now a critical success.
I don't think you actually have a choice.
When you roll with advantage, you have a choice.
To take the crit or not? I thought a crit just was a crit.
I guess you don't have to. Yeah, I guess why wouldn't you choose to crit succeed?
Yeah.
I don't think there's a rule that says you have to, but you probably are going to. On the other side, if you roll with disadvantage and your lower dice is a crit, it is still a crit success. So essentially, while there is no crit fail in this game, the chance of you crit succeeding does not change whether you are rolling with advantage or disadvantage.
You also cannot crit when you are rolling with disadvantage.
Yes, you can.
No. I thought that was like a rule that they literally talked about.
You can crit with disadvantage. Your chance of crit successes with a disadvantage has not changed. Because you can crit succeed.
I could have sworn that came up.
You can still crit succeed with disadvantage in D&D.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't think they've taken that away.
Yeah, if you roll 2 nat 20s. But like I thought
Interesting. I thought they hadn't changed that. No, you just take the lowest option. So if you take the lowest option and it is a crit, it is a crit. You don't know how you feel about that?
Yeah.
I think that you should be able to crit succeed on disadvantage. I don't know that it should be a 1 in 12, but...
Interesting. Okay.
Hey, next time we do a Discussing Daggerheart, there might be a section in the Discussing Daggerheart part where I'm wrong. But I think that based on what I've read and seen in videos and stuff, I think I'm right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I might be getting it confused with Candela. Now I'm confused. Now my brain is
trying to do Daggerheart and Candela back to back has been weird. So with this new advantage system, I do actually think that that hope leans a little bit heavier towards the players.
Okay. Interesting.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's one of those things where I really couldn't tell you one way or the other until playing it.
I agree with that.
It is hard to know. For sure. It could very well change things in favor of the players. I don't have I don't have the big brain to be able to like hypothesize how those numbers math, you know?
I don't even think math-wise. I just think that if it's already a 50-50, right? If you have advantage on 10% of your rolls, and I guess the offset is that disadvantage skews towards fear a little bit more in the GM side.
Yes, that's true.
A little bit. It is interesting. I do wonder how, especially because the GM can't bank as much fear going into combat, I wonder how much it changes how often the GM is moving in combat. And obviously we haven't played it yet, so I don't know. But
Things we'll have to test out.
I do think that, and maybe that might help actually with the lethality of this new version of Daggerheart, where if the GM is moving a little bit less, but the players are a little bit squishier, then that might kind of balance that naturally.
Yeah, because I definitely felt like when we played 1.2, like, when by the time we rolled with fear, you usually had enough actions to move, like, a lot of your people on the field.
Yeah.
So yeah, especially now that you can either take fear or take initiative. So I'm super curious to see how that plays out.
It is just interesting, right? Because in order for the GM to get fear to use their action to get enough fear to take over combat when it isn't a roll with fear, you have to take fear on the opportunities when the turn could pass over. And so it does kind of become this game of, for the GMs, I think that you're going to have a lot more player actions. And so I think the GMs will have a lot of action tokens when people roll with fear. Yeah. But if they want to be able to accrue the fear in order to be able to control the pacing of the fight a little bit, having GM'd it one way, GMing it this way would feel completely different. And I'm so curious when we do finally play it, if this rule's still around, what it feels like, because it's a big change in my brain.
It's like it's just like such a shift in gears, because like, so much is the same in like the spirit of the game, but just like how it plays out feels like it's gonna be very different.
Yeah, but that's that. What was the next thing? I had it in my brain and now I cannot. In addition to that action token situation, going off of the GM situation, there is a lot more clarification on abilities that are called actions.
Yes.
That aren't duality dice rolls. When we played our one-shot, I considered anything the players did in combat to be an action, and I took an action token for that.
Which is what they've changed the rules to.
No, like health potions aren't an action.
Oh, sure. I just mean they've added, like, it is an action.
Yes.
Even though there isn't a roll involved.
Yeah, because there were some spells, and the reason why I homebrewed 1.2 to be this way, and why they've corrected, I think, some of the language on these cards, is there are spells like Wall of Fire that technically in the 1.2 rules are free to just cast. There's no duality dice.
Yeah.
There's no...
You just do it?
There's no cost at all. And the GM does not get a token. And also, if the GM wants to end it, they have to spend fear to end it.
Yeah.
So it was this like massive free spell that basically just does a literal crap ton of damage and costs the GM resources. It just didn't really make sense. So I would take an action token when our player would cast it.
Yeah.
Now they've clarified that to make it a little bit clearer for everybody involved. Yeah. That is an action. An action token goes on the action tracker. And I think that this is a great change. I think that this was something that... It was just a little bit too confusing looking at the number of abilities that my players could use, where they could do 6 or 7 things in a row without accruing
action.
Well, without accruing an action and without the risk of me getting a turn.
Yes, because there's no dice roll.
And they were damaging. It would be like if Eldritch Blast was a free action that you could take on your turn.
Sure, yeah.
And you just get Eldritch Blast, an action, and a bonus action. Yeah. It was just a bit much. And so I think that this clarification is a really strong choice. And I think that it came from a lot of the stuff that I've seen of people being like, wait, I can cast this for free?
Yeah.
What? This is like a level 6 spell.
Yes.
Or what? Whatever I think it... was a level 6 in this game, which is very different from other level 6s.
Yeah. Yeah. Language is very important. I'm glad that those are like the kind of little nuanced things that are being cleaned up. Because that can be overlooked when you are spending so much time with a game, for example. Those things kind of just make sense to you intuitively because you've been devoting all your brain power to it, but someone new who comes in is like, wait, I can just do that.
Yeah.
So.
From there, we got into a lot of different class and race and abilities. We're not going to get into all of them here. I think that some of them are really strong choices. The Fawn has a much better ability now than Headbutt. They basically still have Headbutt, but it's now a kick attack.
Okay.
And they have a second ability. I don't have that pulled up right here.
That's okay. Well, we might do a video that goes more in depth of like the particulars about it.
I can pull it up real fast. Give me 1 second.
That's fair.
Oh, maybe I can't.
They also changed your favorite Seaborn ability.
Oh my god, I'm actually so upset about it.
Yeah.
I'm so upset about the Seaborn ability change.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's not okay. The Seaborns were so fun, and now the Seaborn ability is just like kind of okay.
It's fine. Yeah.
The new Seaborn ability is okay, so before you got an extra action or an extra downtime action.
Yeah.
Now you can sense the ebb and flow of life and have learned to embrace its rhythm. When you roll with fear, put a token on this card. Before you make an action roll, you can spend 1 or more of these tokens to add them as +1 modifiers to your roll. At the end of a session, clear all tokens on this card and gain that many hope. Look, that's a cool ability. I'm not saying that's not a good ability. It's just not as good as the overpowered ability I previously had.
Yeah, exactly.
I want my OP. So yeah, no, the Fawn now have 2 abilities. They have the Kick, which is very similar to the Headbutt ability.
Yeah.
But it is now...
It caps.
Well, it is now just 2d6.
Yes.
So on a successful melee attack, you can mark a stress to kick yourself off of the target, adding 2d6 to the damage and pushing either them or yourself out of melee range.
Yeah.
It's an interesting ability. I do think that it not scaling with your proficiency is a little weird. But they did give you an additional ability to make up for that.
Yeah.
So this is an incredible ability at low levels, I think. Especially if you're like on a bridge and you now have an ability to kick someone off the bridge.
Fair.
Which I think is something that, horses, fawns, anything with those big heavy hooves can do.
Yeah.
They also now have leap. So you can easily leap up to close range across gaps or chasms without making an agility roll. Mm-hmm. Makes sense. I think that those are definitely good abilities for them to have.
Yeah.
I do wonder about the scalability of kick, but if you have a million other attacks at higher levels, you don't really need that one to do anything more than a little bit of damage and move somebody.
Yeah, once you have higher level, like domain cards, you may probably using that less often anyways.
But you're always going to be using leap. I think that with like a race ability, you want it to be something that isn't super powerful, but that sticks with your character through the entirety of the game.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that leap is now the ability that will stick with you through the entirety of the game, and kick will have uses every now and then.
Yeah.
Whereas before with the headbutt, it just felt like it was like something that you would use early game, but then at some point you'll just stop using it.
Yeah.
And so I do think they made a strong choice with the Fawn to give them this. One of the things that I'm so happy about as a GM is that they got rid of the Fungrel ability, which was, as a GM, insane.
To just communicate with the
all
fungus
of the mushrooms everywhere.
Anywhere. Yeah.
So the Fungrels, instead of being able to communicate with the entire network of mushrooms on the planet, which is just to make your DM's life a nightmare.
Yeah.
They now have Circle of Life, which is a great song. If you've ever sung it with a 60-piece orchestra, it will change your life. You can draw the last life essence from the recently deceased. When within very close range of a creature who marks their last hit point and dies, spend 2 hope to describe what death ritual you perform and clear 1 of your hit points.
Ooh.
I love this ability. I think
great.
that it is so thematic to being a mushroom.
Yeah.
It is very useful.
Yeah. At any level.
I'm a big sucker for I have a bonus when I kill you.
Yes.
That to me is that's something I always like in games.
That's why I took Curse of the Fallen Puppet.
Yeah, that's a great ability that you use in our game.
Yeah.
I love this. I think it's a great change for the Fungrel, and it doesn't give me the stress of like, fuck, are there mushrooms in that room? What do all of the mushrooms on the planet know about my big bad?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which just felt...
That's
like
really tough to navigate, for sure.
Well, and in a way it is a bit like Divine or a Commune from D&D. But I think the difference is that is specifically a god who doesn't really have a reason to give you information.
Right.
Unless they want to. Gods are notoriously fickle. Mushrooms are a little bit more literal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they either know stuff or they don't. And why are they, like... I would have fun playing up the, like, well, these mushrooms don't like you very much.
Right,
So
yeah.
you now have rival mushrooms because they won't share information with you.
God.
Most of the other race abilities are pretty similar.
Yeah.
From what I've seen.
Yeah. There's definitely some changes, so definitely take a look if you're interested at like the all the information they put out, all of the new cards. I do appreciate that they did put out a like revised deck if you've already printed off the cards that were from before, and they're like, okay, well, these are the ones that are new, so you don't have to print off everything. But at the same time, it feels like they changed most of them.
I mean, like, you say that, but the updated cards is still 20 pages.
That's what I just said.
No, I'm just giving the exact number.
Oh, yeah, that's
like,
what I mean.
Just the updated cards is 20 pages.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure most of the cards
Sorry, I was trying
different.
to clarify what the exact number was.
Sure, yeah, I was like, you know what, I appreciate the thought. I don't know if it's going to save that much.
Now, some of those, admittedly, are just wording changes.
Yeah.
On a couple of like descriptive things and aren't actually like functional changes to how they work. So I've also noticed there is some updated art. All the art for this game is gorgeous.
Really cool.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get into some other big changes. Going through the changelog here. In domain cards. We're not going to go through all of those changes. Sorry, we don't have time. But if you are swapping out your cards, if you're using your recall to swap them out, that is now an action.
Yes.
So if you don't get to just pull spells out of your vault for free in combat anymore.
Well, free. It takes stress, but yes.
No, but there's a lot of cards, especially low-level ones, that are 0 stress to recall, right?
Yes.
So there was a meta for having your big spell that you can only use once, shooting that to the vault, and then pulling out a lower-level spell for later combat stuff.
Yeah.
That meta is a little bit different now, because if you do that, you are going to be given an action token to your GM.
Yep.
As a GM, I highly appreciate that. I think that's a really good change.
Yeah, because there are definitely going to be use cases where it is still absolutely worth it to switch things out. You know, but it is just a slightly higher cost.
Yeah.
For how the game plays out. Yeah.
So in addition, so we talked about advantage. Advantage for the help action has changed along with the rule set of advantage in general. Maybe should have talked about this when we talked about advantage. But when you help an ally now in this game, you can spend a hope to roll a hope die. So you roll a d12.
Yeah.
That you and your other player will then choose which number. But so the person helping gets to roll a die, which I think, like I was saying with our home game, I like when the help action is the other person rolls because more people are rolling. I feel like rather than someone...
You feel involved.
Well, and having someone at the table be like, yeah, I'll help you with that, and then go back to their phone. It's like, I'll help you with that. They're doing something. It keeps more people in the moment.
Sure. Yeah.
I think this is fun. I like the way they've added this rule. And with the Guardian ability to change your D12 into a D20, having your Guardian help is going to be really beneficial because they actually have a better chance of rolling with hope than you do with a D12.
Yes.
So if you're going to get helped by someone, get helped by your Guardian.
Yes. In terms of, I bring this up because I did play a ranger in our campaign. The like beast information sheet, all of that, totally different.
Completely different.
Changed. So gonna have to look into that. We're not
going to cover it today.
That might be its own video.
They changed it so much that like
Yes.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Did you like? I don't know that we ran it right, but did you like the way that the beast companion felt when you played your ranger?
Yeah, I think like, yes, I did. There were things that I was definitely confused on, so I appreciate. I know that they've changed a lot, but I think like, even if some of those changes are just like clarifications on how the nitty gritty of it works, that's something I appreciate. But yeah, I like that like I like that the ranger companion was like an extension of myself, but I don't know. I don't know that I found a way to utilize it in the best way when we were playing the game, especially in a roleplay sense. I kind of buffed my companion so that, like, I got better evasion when it was near. And it was kind of like almost having, like, an item that gives you buffs throughout, like, during combat and stuff. And I tried to not play it like that. And so I hope that that's something that's been taken into consideration, that it's more of a animal companion who, you know, does listen to you, but just doesn't give you, like, pluses and things.
Yeah, I think that we role-played it a lot just because it came up so much in the discussion of your fears and the, like, losing your past animal companions and whatnot, but I do see what you're saying there.
Yeah.
So a couple of other quick changes that they added to, like, combat. The one we talked about was that if your stress is ever full, you are now vulnerable until you clear a stress. There is no way to end that vulnerability other than clearing stress, which I think is super dangerous. There is new group action roles. So they have included a new system where when you want to do a group action, like sneaking into a castle, there is a leader of that, and then people roll individually to help that. I don't have the full system for that in front of me right now, but there is a breakdown for how that system works. I think it's a great choice. I think that group roles in D&D are always difficult, and I think that part of the reason for that is that every time I've ever done a group roll in D&D, it has been whatever the DM said, and I don't understand if we succeeded or not because I don't really know what just happened.
Sure, yeah.
Even watching Critical Role, like Matt Mercer does a lot of group rolls, and he'll
like, wow, whatever you say.
He will sometimes at the end of, and partially it's because his table's 7 people, but he'll say like, most of you were above the average, and I was like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
success
if you say so.
So I think that having a mechanic for that is smart. In addition to that, tag team roles only cost 1 action token. But they also only give 1 hope. So when the 2 players roll, the one whose hope die is chosen for that roll is the one who gets hope. You don't both get hope from a tag team roll with hope.
Fair. Yeah,
which
that
balances the 1 action token, I think, pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to add bonuses and such, you have to do that before you roll. You can't add it on afterwards, which is fair.
Yeah. They've added a bunch of small things that I don't really have opinions of because I don't really know how they play. A lot of this, the changelog is like, clarify that the roll bonuses for action rolls, damage rolls, or action rolls have to be added before the roll.
Yeah, a lot of it
is add
is
bonuses after.
Clarification and adjusting language around so that it is clearer how things function. There's a lot of that in this. We covered most of the big stuff.
Yeah, they've renamed the optional rule for doubling your severe damage. That's now called massive damage.
Massive.
I like massive damage.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, oh my god, there's so much here. It's so crazy.
The one thing about armor was that you can't, like, switch your armor in the middle of a high stress situation. So, like, in a fight or, like, in, you know, the middle of, like, a conversation, like, you can't just, like, whip out a new piece of armor I
didn't realize you needed a rule for that.
Yeah, I'm assuming what happened is that there were games where someone was like, yeah, I just have a bunch of armor in my bag, so I use up all my armor slots, and then in the middle of combat, I'm gonna change from this, like, used plate mail to the new plate mail, and there was no ruling for that. So
okay, if you were wearing a chainmail shirt, I could see how that could be possible.
Well, it's not any longer.
Yeah. No, I'm saying, like, I could see the player arguing that and be like, it's a shirt. I can take off my shirt and put on a shirt in 6 seconds. And then you have that player at the table that's like, whoa, and everyone's like, I don't want to see your belly, dude. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, they're like, look how fast I can change my shirt that's made out of cotton and weighs 0.3 pounds instead of 12. I don't know. Yeah, it is one of those things where I agree. I didn't realize that there needed to be a ruling for that because it never came up in our game, but I can absolutely see how somebody brought it up in theirs.
One of the big things they changed was there is now an optional initiative order. We should have talked about this from the beginning because it's probably the thing that people are talking about the most online because, God, people get spicy about having no initiative. But there's now an optional rule where at the beginning of what is not a round, but we're going to call around because I don't know what else to call it, every player gets 3 action tokens.
It's like the beginning of like combat.
Well, but then they get those 3 action tokens back once all players have used all 3 of their action tokens.
Yeah.
So it basically allows for there to be something akin to initiative.
Yeah.
Say an action, bonus action move.
Yeah, if you need a mechanic to regulate your players because they don't know how to share and take turns, there is one now for you.
But I don't think that's fair. I think that initiative is good. I personally... As much as I enjoyed the pop-up initiative of our game, I think that in a lot of ways it is tricky. I mentally on the GM, I think keeping track of it, because
I am being facetious when I make jokes about it in a way that, like, you know, there are people complaining online, and it was like, well, you know, maybe communicate at your table, and like that should be a big part of the game as well. But I do want to say that I am partially joking. I think that it is a good idea to have some kind of touchstone for who is like participating and who is not, because you can use all your actions right away. If you see an opportunity, if there's a situation where you're like, okay, I have a plan and I'm gonna do this because it's gonna have a crazy payoff, or I think it's going to, right? You can blow all your actions, and then you have to wait for a while because you just did a lot of stuff. And I think that not having to determine like an order of me next, then you next, then you next, then you next keeps the spirit of Daggerheart in like, oh, I have an action token, I want to do this thing. And then once you're out of those, the people who still have turns left have to take them. I say have to, kind of wink, wink, nudge. But also, it brings around to, remember how we talked about sometimes it felt like the Guardian was a character who could just go out in the battlefield and kind of stand there and not take actions. Yeah. This, now, they kind of have to.
They have to do something.
They have to do something, and I think that that is almost 2 birds, 1 stone.
Yeah. 100%.
And so I do think that it is a positive change. I have a feeling we will likely implement that when we do play.
I don't think we will.
No, you don't think so?
With our setup, it is too hard to like throw action tokens around.
No, not throw them around. But I mean, like, say you're at the table and you just put 3 things here, and then you like move them back. And you're like, okay, I've used 3 of them, and then you like move them forward.
I think that this optional rule. Look, I think you can only do 3 things until everyone's done 3 things. That's great. I think that with our setup and with a lot of setups, particularly virtually, I don't think it works at all unless you build a virtual tabletop that does this somehow. Right. But I think keeping track of this is actually really hard to do. And
that's fair.
If you're sitting at a table together where you can all reach something together, I think that this as a...
Wait, why does everyone else have to reach your dice? Or your tokens or whatever? If you're like, I have 3 tokens, no one else needs to touch those except for you.
The point of it is for everyone to be able to see who's gone.
Yeah.
And for the DM to be able to spend them. And so it gets complicated when... like if I'm trying to see how many action tokens I have and they're in front of you, that's a hard system.
Yeah, I think if you are at a normal dining room table playing Daggerheart with your friends, it is so much easier than either, like you said, online or in a setup that is meant for streaming where things are spread apart because we have cameras and lights and TVs and blah, blah, blah.
I think the best version of this is that there's 2 little baskets or like our rolling trays. And one is... like action tokens that have been given to the GM for him to use, and one that is used. And so that once that's full, but then also like, I guess the GM's still going to have to write down how many action tokens he has when he gives things back. It gets...
The GM will always have to keep track of action tokens, yes.
The physical tokens get a little bit complicated for me when you have to hand them back to the player. Because I'm like, well, no, but I actually need to keep track of these because my action tokens cross over into the next turn. But these ones don't.
But you don't have to give them.
No, but you would in a system where you're giving them 3 tokens at the beginning of a combat, and those tokens have to get back to the GM.
But you don't have to do... if we're sitting at a table and I'm like, okay, these are my 3 tokens here, and then I'm going to move it over when I take an action, and move it over and take an action. Oh, I'm out. Like, you know what I mean?
The reason why I think that's too complicated is because the whole point is to make it very visible to everybody in one spot who has gone a lot. And as soon as you move that to being everybody who wants to understand who's moved has to look in 4 places, I think you've added too many layers of effort into what is supposed to be a simplifying gesture.
What you could do, and I'm not saying that I disagree with you. I think that is definitely a worthy criticism of this. That does make it tough. But what you could do is you just have a pool in the middle, and each person has their own color of action tokens, and you put it in the middle. So you just have to look at the middle basket to see which color is in there the most. And then once they're all in there, everyone takes them back.
Right. That in that scenario, you are still having a. This is such a like random conversation. I'm sorry if this is boring, but I think it's fascinating.
I think it's
fun. I get anxious sometimes when we talk.
Because you're like, how is the internet going to perceive this?
Put those in the basket.
Yeah.
You are now creating a system where there are action tokens that the players are keeping track of that are separate from the action tokens that the GM is keeping track of.
Yes.
And so it's, again, it is I just think that in the effort to get rid of initiative, it is a bunch of stuff to keep track of.
Yeah.
In a game where you're keeping track of stress and HP and armor slots and...
Yeah, I guess. It's just tough because I
just
like
think
this idea.
Get good at the popcorn initiative. What I'm saying is get good, kids.
Yeah. I get that. I don't know. I feel conflicted about it because on one hand I'm like, I like that there is the freedom to jump in and be like, I have a thing that I can do here. But also if you have to keep adding initiative mechanics, why not just have initiative?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or have like a handoff initiative, right? Where like the players choose the order that they go in. I think there's a game system that has this where basically at the start of combat, I think this is Matt Colville's system. You roll a d6 and the GM rolls a d6 and the initiative is passed. But and I'm not saying this would work for Daggerheart. I don't think it would. But essentially like the players choose who goes first or the GM goes first. They have a turn, and then they pass it off to the players. The players then choose who goes, and then it's now the GM's turn again. It is not traditional initiative in that it is not a set order of who goes in what order, and the players have a lot of opportunities to set each other up for actions that way.
Yeah, maybe.
But it is a bit of a collaborative initiative. I just think that
you could do like a pass off, like, okay, who wants to go next? And it's like, oh, me. Like
this game feels so built for this free-flowing initiative.
Yeah.
And I think that I think that the optional initiative, I think that it is great if you can run it. I think that virtually you have to be comfortable with the popcorn initiative. You just have to. Or else because Daggerheart's going to be hard to run virtually already for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Partially like the cards and... You know, obviously Demiplane makes it a lot easier, but I find having those physical cards really helps me with this game. I don't know how you run it without them. And so if you're running it virtually with people in different places, that can be a limiting factor, right? How do you get everybody their cards? A lot of people don't want to have to print them, especially for like a one shot.
Yeah. 100%.
And it's not like you can print the cards individually. They come in these large sheets where like you might only need one card from that sheet.
Yeah.
It's going to be easy for us because I anticipate we'll probably run a lot of Daggerheart games. Although we'll probably buy the official set or whatever. Because it's our job. But I can see people when playing these games virtually not wanting to do all the little itty bitty things because it's through a computer. When I'm playing virtually, I don't want to have a bunch of reasons to look away from the game.
Yeah, 100%.
And if I'm keeping track of little miniatures on my table in front of me, so I just think like you have to get comfortable with the initiative style.
Yeah.
And it gives the GM a lot to keep track of, but I don't know. I think that having played it, I'm just defensive of their initiative style because I think it works.
Yeah.
I think in our two games with it,
for us.
we had a lot of fun with it. We both liked it. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that like I think that the main takeaway from anything to do with the initiative style is that if it's not working for your table, maybe you need to work on some communication before like anything else, right? If that is a problem, if the people at your table cannot take turns and share and make space for one another, I think that is a deeper conversation than the initiative of your game.
But also, if you are struggling with initiative, I think that's okay. I think that you might be being a little bit harsh about it. I think that it can be hard. I think that things come into games that are not indicative of who people actually are. Sometimes there's a lot of elements to it. I think that the option system is something to talk through with your table and come up with a version of it that works for you. Especially because there's a lot of stuff that are free actions in this game. So 3 tokens is a lot. Like 3 tokens can be a long time.
Yeah, true. Although a lot of things are added now that they're like actions. So I'm going to have to, again, take a bit of a deeper dive into all of the new abilities. Whoo! It's going to be a lot of reading.
Throwing weapons no longer receive a disadvantage. There's no more damage penalty for throwing weapons.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of added stuff in
bunch of little things. I think we covered most of the big stuff.
One of the things that I really appreciate as a GM is that there is a bunch more guidance for running adversaries, running non-combat adversaries. There's definitely missing stuff here still in the game.
Which I think they've acknowledged. I feel like okay.
Definitely. They have in their live stream they did acknowledge that you can't run a DMPC right now in any way that really makes sense. And they're talking about how they're going to make that work. I really appreciate that. I am someone who does not endeavor to have DMPCs with a party. That's not really my style. But there are always people around my party in combat situations, and I want to know how to handle them. Particularly if the initiative is going to be kind of the popcorn style, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to take up my players' time doing stuff to do stuff for them, because that feels A, like it takes away their agency, and B, like I'm just fighting myself. Which is never really that fun. I remember in Roleplay Relay 1, there was one fight that ended with me killing, because Clarence got a kill. The ogre thing. And that one was funny, and it was a good moment, because Garrick had just been missing, and then Clarence kills him. But then when I got the next day, I got a kill as well with the Dragonborn. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I feel like I'm, like, taking away from your play.
Right.
And nobody was mad at me. Like, the players at the table were like, no, it was a great moment. It was really fun. Oh, because he killed Davin Bashir. But it was just the math. And I'm a big, like, I don't fudge life. I don't fudge HP, and I don't fudge dice rolls. And so sometimes the story works out that way. But sometimes there's just characters with your party, and this game makes that a little weird. And I'm grateful that they're working on it.
That's a big thing that they need to figure out. But I'm really looking forward to the environments that they're introducing and what that means. I think that's what I'm the most excited for in this update. I think that making the game bigger on that scale is really exciting, and so that's what I'm looking forward to.
Giving the example they used of having a stat block for a party scene, to me, A, gave me so much anxiety remembering how bad I was at parties in college, but B, I was like, that is, I think that sometimes I will prep something like that, and I won't think about it as a stat block. And even just them saying that in that live stream changed I was like, oh, I can stat block a party. I've never thought about it that way, but that actually unlocks something for me.
Yeah, sometimes it just takes a different way of thinking about things, a different approach, and a different way of saying it. Language is important. That's why there's all these clarifications. It matters. It matters a lot.
One thing that I will say to the team, just let the bard's rally ability be more than once a session.
Yeah, that sucks.
Them getting the 1d6 once per session. We when we played it, we fucked up the rules, and our bard used it constantly. It wasn't overpowered, and it felt great. But it being one time is a little rough.
It's a little rough.
And they've clarified it to make sure that you know that it's once per session.
I know, and that makes me, like, legitimately sad, because I'm like, oh, I never want to be a bard.
But we didn't say it earlier, so I do want to say the big multi-classing change that they changed, that I didn't know they changed because we ran it like this, is that when you multi-class, you do get the base class ability, the standard class ability, as well as a subclass ability. So it's not just a subclass ability. The wording around multiclassing in this game is still complicated to me, but it was worse before. Multiclassing is starting to make a little bit more sense, and I like the direction they're going with it.
Yeah.
Even though I actually kind of think it's a little bit too late. But I think that this was this is a good choice. Because it's what I thought in the first place, but the language didn't make it super clear.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that level 6 is late or level 5 is late for multiclassing. In this game, if you get the base level ability, right?
I don't know. It depends on how those abilities play off of one another.
It does. And also, I think that people are going to come up with builds that make it super broken. Like, I can see that argument.
And also, I'm not saying that you have to, force people into this, but I think that it's important to get a handle on how your character plays and runs before you try and add, a whole other deck. 2 decks, maybe, depending on what you pick that you can choose from. That is a lot of information, and I'm not saying that, people shouldn't be allowed to do it, but I understand why they have made the decision that they have. And also, I don't know, if I'm playing a character and I'm, level 2, and then suddenly I want to multi-class into... I feel like an appropriate story reason for multiclassing is unlikely to show up before level 5 anyways. Personally.
I see. The only reason I don't know that I agree with that is because of the way Daggerheart is structured, you're already kind of a hero at level 1. You know what I mean? Because you start level 1 with your, base ability and your subclass ability... And
yeah, but I wouldn't say hero. When we were level 2, I felt like a mercenary for hire. You know what I mean? Kind of I definitely did not feel incredibly powerful. I felt like a normal person going about the world trying to, make a living.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that it's because there's only 10 levels that it feels like it's in the back half of your career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that that's one thing that's going to depend on playing a longer campaign, because we did level 1 and 2 and then we jumped to 10. I feel like we've missed kind of the middle of the game.
The middle bit there.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, that is most of our thoughts about a cursory glance at the changes to 1.3. Clarisse, what was the biggest change, do you think, now that we've talked about it for however long this was?
The biggest change.
What do you think is the most impactful on your style of play?
I think that changing how stress works is a big shift in thinking about how combat runs and how to also spec a character, how important stress is to you, those slots, the armor, all of that nitty gritty feels very interconnected and very important and very different.
Yeah, I feel as from the player side, I see what you mean. I think that leveling up your stress is going to be so much more important, because becoming vulnerable is so risky in a game that has so many conditions.
Yeah.
Giving the enemy advantage for the rest of the fight is
crazy,
really dangerous.
Yeah.
I like it. I think that there's probably, in response to that, going to be a number of ways to get rid of stress. That will, particularly around potions.
There might honestly be ways, because they did update a lot of domain cards and abilities. There actually might already be some things in there that we haven't had a chance to really dive into. But, what about you?
For me, I think it's the biggest change. I'll do one that I like and one that I'm on the fence about.
Okay.
The changing the fear and the way the turn gets passed around, isn't my favorite yet, and it's only yet because I haven't played it.
Okay.
There's a small concern to me that I will, as a GM, feel like I need to get fear to use abilities, and in the interim, the players will get too many turns. That might be unfounded.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it feels, how it's balanced when we play.
I feel like as the GM, the either or scenario slows the game down a little bit in the And a lot of the changes that they made were to get rid of analysis paralysis, right? Like simplifying the armor slots, giving you a few more of them. Those kinds of things were and simplifying your damage thresholds and the stress. It's all to like take what we found, which was not my favorite part of the game, which was you take 26 damage. Okay, give me 3 minutes to do the math to figure out what the best version of my armor
and
abilities
if it's worth
is.
it,
Yeah.
Yep, I hear you.
That wasn't my favorite part of combat. It was the one part of combat that felt like it slowed things down for me, was the post damage calculation business. So I understand removing a bunch of stuff to make that a little bit easier, but in the interim they've added this moment where it's like, okay, I rolled with fear, and then as the GM I now have to make a choice each time that I don't know how I feel about it yet.
That's
and
fair.
I would have to play it to really know.
Yep.
The change that I really do like is the environments is a big one.
Sure, yeah.
I also think that there's just a really there's a stronger version of this game here now. I understand a little bit better how I am supposed to play this game. And that seems super general and not very specific, but I think that when I look globally at the changes that they made to Daggerheart, what I see is them zooming the lens of this game in on the mechanics that are most important to the playing of it.
And what makes Daggerheart,
Yeah.
as opposed to something else. Yeah.
And I think they made some strong choices in that way. I still think this game is very much unfinished. I think there's a lot of work to go, but I also think that they're a year out.
Yeah.
And so,
they got time and they're willing to change things. And I think that is actually a good sign.
if they can roll out an update this big in 1 month,
Yeah.
that gives me a lot more hope for where they're going to be in a year.
Yeah.
Whereas if this update had come in 6 months, I'd be like, oh, this is the halfway point,
Yeah.
right?
I feel like
Yeah.
the halfway point should start to be more fine tuning than complete overhauls like this. So it kind of makes sense that this might be the biggest one, if I were to guesstimate.
But no, I'm happy with where the game's at. I like these decisions.
Yeah.
I feel good about it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff that is so different that I'm like, I need to play this because I actually don't know what this is now.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting. That is not what I expected from Daggerheart. I thought the game was going to be more or less. We were going to get more enemies and stuff like that.
Yeah, no.
And they were like, boom, new game.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, we got some friends who are down to playtest this with us soon-ish.
Who knows what version?
Who knows what version?
We probably can't film that till June.
Yeah, so we'll see what it looks like in June, and we'll get back to you guys, and hopefully we'll have some insights on how it runs.
I just know we are going to film that on a Saturday, Sunday. And then on Tuesday, there's going to be a live stream.
Yep.
We're going to film 1.4.
Yeah.
And then Spencer Stark and Matt Mercer are going to be like, hey guys, welcome to 2.0.
Yep.
And we're going to be like, we haven't put our show out yet.
Yep. Fun. I love that for us.
Can we'll call them. We'll be like, hey guys, please don't update this until our show's out.
Yeah, right.
Let us get some views.
Excuse me, Matt Mercer.
That was a lot of thoughts. That maybe not the most structured conversation, but when we did our first episode of discussing Daggerheart, I had read the whole book and I had time with it, and it took us like about a week to get through. And this time we didn't have that. They changed it, and I think for the better. Ultimately, I think for the better. I think they're heading in the right direction. And
I'm excited.
I just can't wait to see what's next. I kind of wish they were doing one shots with each version. I understand that would be a lot of stress on their team and crew. I totally get that that's not reasonable.
Yeah.
But it would have been nice in like when the game comes out to have had like an official game.
Yeah.
In each version. So go back and watch.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll see. For now, if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you don't, hit the dislike button. Leave mean comments down below because the algorithm god is hungry and we must feed her. This episode, that algorithm goddess is...
Me.
Great.
I'm hungry.
If you want to follow us on the internet, you're hungry?
No.
Oh, okay.
Not at all.
I was like, we've eaten dinner. If you want to follow us on the internet, you can. I'm at Nerdy Nightly.
I'm at Claris Polaris.
Don't know when the next one of these will be up, but Dragonlance is not live. Dragonlance is pre-taped this Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern, and then we'll be off the next week. But yes, do the thing. Watch it. That's the thing.
Nailed it. Crushed it.
Do something nerdy tonight.
Bye, guys.
Bye.